My name is Keenan, and I am an aspiring social worker. I use the term aspiring because until you actually get your bachelor's degree and or am licensed, you can not necessarily be a social worker or use the term, but you can do social work. So, with that being said, I do social work because I'm a case manager for a recovery home. So that's what makes this project a little interesting because though I can easily just quote you some things out of the book and the format, I'd like to attempt to address some of the things that I actually do from my perspective. And being that I'm still striving to become a social worker, some things may still be evolving, and I may actually have the gist of some other things. So come along with me for a nice little 10-minute ride here now. Um, I have a few questions I want to answer, and the first one is to explain the basic concepts of social work interview. So I could say it like this: social work interviews are basically purposeful conversations between practitioners and clients. When I say the practitioner, he may be or she may be the clinician, the therapist, um, multiple roles that social workers may play. And of course, the client is the individual who's seeking the help or whatnot, right? Now, our duty is basically to facilitate a cooperative working relationship by having an open conversation and dealing with the wants, the problems, bringing forth resources, and ultimately bringing solutions to whatever problems, right? Now, this attention is done both verbally and non-verbally. So, another question is, what helping processes are involved in the stages of social work practices? Well, obviously, whenever I go and I'm dealing with one of my clients personally, um, I can go off of multiple different theories or perspectives, right? So I may go from a strengths perspective, in which I'm showing the individual not only what they're best at, like empowering them, but showing them what they're best at and working and creating a plan based off of what they're best at. Um, I may come. There's multiple theories. I should say that I think there's over 500 different theories and perspectives, and each situation obviously is going to deal with using them from a different scenario. For instance, if I'm dealing with a child who has been mentally or sexually abused, and I'm dealing with a person who's coming to get help or relief from substance abuse, obviously, I'm not going to use the same perspectives and the same tools in dealing with them. So, go back to the question different things that are involved. Well, being open, being engaging, um, listening, writing, taking notes. Um, I mean, there's so many. I don't want to go through the plan change process. I don't think that's what's being asked in that question. I think when you're asking what is being used, what tools are used, you're actually using your interpersonal tools. You're making sure the individual feels comfortable with you, and you are allowing the individual to express their concerns and their plans and what they need to get accomplished. And you bring forth something that you both can come to an agreement that the individual can do. The NASW had recently spoke about often social workers and caseworkers tend to interject and input what they plan to do for a client and not necessarily allow for self determination and the client to stand on their own too. So that's a major perspective that has to be addressed when we're talking about the stages of social work practice. So another question is they wanted me to define the roles of social workers and human service workers in modern society. So Let me get to that. But before I get to that, I want to speak of some of the roles that we do. We deal with voluntarism. Um, we also have to take roles over a conversation and the agenda of the interview. You know, you don't want to have an individual take you and sway you in different places. You want to make sure when you're attempting to bring forth a change or create a plan that you kind of stick to the script. Um, you want to deal with using your interview techniques, um, establish goals, and bring forth those techniques that I was telling you, those different perspectives and philosophies that have been used and time tested. Also, you want to make sure that you supersede theoretical differences, because if you are so concrete in one area, you may tend to um, not be as effective. You know, you have to be genuine, and also you need to take into consideration the settings, because obviously I wouldn't want to take a person who's been traumatized and have the interview based out in that same area. You want to have an interview or deal with your plan change in a place that's conducive to change and growth and development. Also, we deal with things like counseling, psychotherapy, and uh, basic social work. So there's multiple things that we do when we're attempting to bring forth a change. Now, what was the third question I was asked? I apologize for that one. How do social workers? Oh, my fault. Define roles of social workers in human services. All right, so there's a lot of roles that we play, right? Mental health is one. Um, and you can be a clinician, you can be a therapist, you can be a counselor. When I'm speaking of these different areas, sometimes we're dealing with substance abuse, which is what I do daily. And I may find myself counseling. I may find myself being a group therapist. I may find myself straying from that and just dealing with basically life coaching. You can go into areas such as geriatrics. You can go into the courts probation, things of that nature. Working with children's services. I mean, so there's so many areas and roles that you play whenever you're dealing in human services and social work. So you're a friend, you're an heir, you're a counselor, you're a case manager. Um, sometimes you have to deal with the transference. So sometimes you may project the role of that mother or that father or that big brother. It depends on how the individual sees you. And you have to be fluid. You have to be able to move into each one of these roles and be effective in each one. Okay, so I'm gonna have to speed up a little bit because we're closing in on 8 minutes. How would an effective social worker develop a plan to assist individuals achieving day to day? All right, so if I take an individual and he comes in and he's a substance abuse, a drug addict, he's suffering from the disease of addiction. Obviously, I'm gonna do a biopsychosocial, and I'm gonna try to find out not only what we can do to help remedy the individual from the issue that he has, which in his case is substance abuse. But often we kind of peel back layers of the onion and look at the cause and not just treat the symptoms. So I may have to look at some of his weaknesses. Okay, if you don't have a job, what is it? Do you need to be educated? Do you need formal training? If you have issues with health, why? Is it because you don't have health insurance? Is it because you just lack the information or the resources of where to go? So there's multiple things that I may do when I create a plan to make sure that an individual can receive the services he needs. And usually that comes from after doing a case consult and addressing all the referrals that are available. Where are we at now? Now, how do we demonstrate listening and communication? Um, we listen. We ask open-ended questions. Um, we sometimes may use small body gestures. We often do more listening than speaking. That's usually the most effective, and you're genuine. You make sure that you're an individual that person doesn't mind opening up to and speaking with. And lastly, how do social workers express empathy? Well, first and foremost, we understand that empathy is a way of understanding and feeling an individual's pain. So you may have facial expressions, body language. Sometimes you may have to, sounds, soothing sounds. I mean, there's multiple ways that you do that. Let an individual know that you actually can feel their pain, that you've been where they've been. And if you haven't been where they've been, you're not sympathetic, making them feel like a victim, but you're not apathetic and making them feel like they don't matter. You're striding that line right in between. But basically, social work is so complex, it's almost impossible to keep everything wrapped up within 10 minutes. This is my attempt, and I hope it's good enough. Thank you.